What's up, guys, and welcome to the Rebalance podcast, where we dive into topics that matter most when it comes to overcoming struggles, injuries, and finding balance in your life. Everybody's idea of balance is that bit different, so my goal is to give you different perspectives, practical tips, as well as expert insights into what it means to live a balanced life. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm a physiotherapist and a health coach, and I've been helping people reignite their love for challenge, overcome their fear, and find more balance in their life through the process of self-development. So, let's get into it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we are going to look at how to fix a chronic or recurring issue. Now, on the podcast I did recently, we looked at understanding the root cause of a chronic issue, and it was really, really important to start there, because this then will help you to build on top of that as what you can do going forward. And when we're looking at a chronic issue, the thing is, the majority of people are looking at something muscular when we need to look deeper. And we need to look more at the neurological side of it, because it is something when it consistently flares up, when you get these times that it feels good and other times that it feels way worse. That's because it's more neurologically based. And once we get an understanding of that, it becomes a lot easier or a lot simpler, let's say, to fix it. It still takes work, but it does become a lot simpler, because if you think it's a muscular issue and you're going after that all the time, whether this be a shoulder pain, a neck pain, a back pain, or knee or hip, or whatever area you're looking at specifically where you're feeling the pain that keeps kicking up over and over again. But if you're too tied into the muscular side of things, you will just go after strengthening, and then you'll never understand why it flares up randomly. You'll never understand why you have a load of pain one day and you don't have it the next, when you feel like you're doing everything right, or feels like you're going around in circles and you're always chasing your tail trying to fix these things. And these are all comments that I get from clients all the time before we start working together, because they'll say that they've been to loads of physios, they'll give me all their diagnoses, they'll tell me the MRI results that they have, and they'll know it inside out. They'll know the anatomy as good as anyone, but they still don't know why the issue isn't being fixed. So I would definitely say to check out that podcast on understanding chronic pain and understanding a chronic issue, or a recurring issue, as it'll give you better insight into it. And I also have a free guide out on it as well, so it'll be in the description of this podcast. You can scroll down, it's about 1,500 words, and at least there you'll be able to read through it. So everyone picks up things differently, and sometimes when you're looking at an issue like this, it does take a couple of different perspectives to get it right or start to work on it. Now, without further ado, we're gonna jump straight into it. The first thing when we're looking at fixing a chronic issue, and I mentioned it there, is we need to understand it. Because if we don't understand why the pain is kicking up at a certain time, if we don't understand what's contributing to you having a 3 out of 10 pain one day and an 8 out of 10 pain the next day, and you not feeling like you've changed anything, in some cases you might have even just been resting and it's still the pain kicks up, we need to understand what or why that is, and we need to understand what affects it. Now, it affects everyone slightly different, and your triggers and the way your body reacts to something is completely different. And as you've heard me mention, if it's a neurological issue, things like your stress can flare it up, your sleep can flare it up. Let's say if your diet is off, or if you're not drinking enough water, if you're extremely fatigued, if you have overworked the area, there's loads of different things. And that's why I do say check out that podcast, because I go into a lot more depth on each of those. But once you get an understanding of what it is specifically, in your case, then you can look at working on it after that. And I am someone who pushes the understanding so much, because when people get stuck in those cycles, it just feels like nothing is working for you. It feels like you've tried everything. But if you do get an understanding that, okay, right, I have been doing everything here, I've been doing it all right, but let's say I had a presentation due at work and the work really ramped up, and it all flared off, okay, I can tie it to that I wasn't able to handle that stress on that day, or I was able to handle it, but my nervous system handled it differently, and that gave me a lot more pain. That's why each case is different. I was recently talking to a guy who was dealing with neck and shoulder pain, and we were looking at, it was a recurring issue, it keeps coming back with different things, but we were looking at what his specific triggers were. And in his case, it was more that it was kicking up with fatigue. Like once he got fatigued, it would start to kick up, or once he got really stressed, it would start to kick up. Now, without understanding where the stress was coming from, it's going to be really hard to fix that, because otherwise we would have just kept on loading on exercises. And now that we know that fatigue was one of his main triggers, adding a load of extra exercises isn't going to be the best way to fix that issue. And that's why it is, every case is different. So we have to look at how we can fix that. So without having a good knowledge, you're going to find yourself going around it in circles. And sometimes with these issues, a diagnosis can be as much of a problem as anything else. Honestly, some of the diagnoses that people get, like let's say for back pain, where you're looking at a weak core, you're looking at weak glutes, these could be all signs afterwards that, okay, right, they have become weak because the person is not using the area as much. The same as your quads will get weak if you stop walking, or, you know, very basic one, but your shoulders get weak if you stop lifting. But sometimes they use that as a diagnosis because it's just an easy one to say, okay, let's go after this. We build up a stronger core and it feels better for a couple of weeks, but then it just starts to flare up again. So do you just continue to build the core up until you are Mr. Olympia and then you look like you have this massive core, you're a strong man? No, because that's not going to help you. Strength will work to a certain degree, but unless you take care of the other factors as well, and then you work in more strength, like you have to keep, it's like you're teetering over and back. You need to keep going over and back, fixing each of them and just making small changes all the time. That's where you're going to get the long-term benefit. And then when you understand, the reason I push understanding so much is that once you understand how the chronic issue is created from a root cause level, like the actual neurological level of it, it's going to take a while to get a grip of this. But if you understand that, you don't get as frustrated when it starts to kick up. And that fear of pain drops because you don't feel like you've re-injured it. And this is why it's so important to have like a process or a system that you can work through. And then when it kicks up, you have like a reflection side of things that you look back and you can assess and you can pick out your triggers and you have a good understanding of the issue, and then you go back and you work on it again. That's the case. It's really important to have that process or system to work on as well. Now, number 2, when we're looking at how to fix a chronic issue or recurring issue, is, as I just mentioned, reflection. It's funny, people are like, I don't want to just go journaling for no reason and just starting to jot down how I feel all the time. Some people like that, some people don't like it. It really depends on your personality. But when I'm talking about reflection, I'm talking more about reflection on the triggers that caused it to kick up. So you look back on your week, the week before, and you say, okay, on Wednesday, it was a lot more painful. Why was that? And then you'll find out that, let's say you have a team meeting every Wednesday, and it just that you have so many more tasks to do after that meeting, or let's say the stress of that meeting itself ramps up your nervous system and causes the pain to kick up once again. And if you didn't reflect on that and you didn't look back and you didn't look in hindsight is 20/20. It's very easy to tell it when you look back on things, and then you can make changes. Then you'll start to get a better understanding again. It'll improve your learning, and it'll help you to identify those specific triggers and beliefs, as well as the attitudes and how they contribute in each case. A lot of times, as I say, when you look back at the year and you say, my God, my back was killing me in April of last year or May, like a really, really simple one that I often get with college students is like, oh, May, it's around about March, February, people start to getting a lot more pain, or their pain kicks up in their shoulders, their neck, their back. And it seems like nothing has changed, but it's really flared up. It's like, okay, when you look back on the year and then you see that, okay, at that time, I also had my thesis due and I was working on that all the time. So my sleep was dropping off, my stress was increasing, my workload, my cognitive load was increasing massively, or had increased massively. It's so much easier to say, do you reckon that contributed to the pain that you were feeling? I think so. Not that I think so, I know so, because it does. How it does is it ramps up your nervous system like an 8 out of 10 in this fight or flight mode. We kind of get stuck. We train ourselves to be in that mode because we need to be alert all the time. We're trying to get loads of jobs done, and the body will start kicking back at a certain stage. Now, I'm reducing everything down here to make it a bit. It's obviously a bit more complex than this, but I'm giving you the basic principles of how it works. And if you take the basic principles, then you can start working on it. So, really good. Really simple technique to improve your understanding is reflect on it. Reflect on when it kicks up. Write down when the pain is worse, on what days it's worse, and then at the end of the week or at the end of the month, you can look back on that and say, okay, well, when we were training with, let's say, a football team, we had a championship match coming up, so we had upped our training significantly. At the same time, let's say you've a child who's teething, that happens at the same time. So you have that stress of, let's say, your sleep is affected and you're always on edge and you're trying to care for them. At the same time, you're upping your training, and maybe at the same time something at work picks up. Now you're looking at a lot of factors contributing to why it could kick up. And if you don't have your techniques and your strategies and your tactics to calm that down in the moment, it's going to feel a lot worse. So you have to have those techniques and strategies. But as I said, reflection helps you identify the triggers and beliefs and attitudes and the things that cause it. And then you can have your techniques and strategies. But if it was just in the moment, randomly kicks up, you don't know why, you just feel that, Jesus, this couldn't be the most common, or one of the most common complaints I get is, it couldn't have happened at a worse time. I had loads of stuff to do. It's like, do you think the fact that you had loads of stuff to do had a bigger impact on it kicking up than anything else? And that's what we need to look at. But as I say, hindsight is 2020, so reflection is really, really good, because once you come to understand it, once you learn more about it, then you reflect, you pick up on it, and then the next time you know, okay, right, at the end of next week, I'm going to be able to, or it could kick up because of this. Really quick side story. I was working with a guy a couple of months ago who had it was kind of like a mid-back issue that was kicking up, and it was kicking up randomly for him. And we were looking at why it was happening at the time, and there was a lot of other factors going on in his life. He was training in MMA. He had a lot of he had started a new business for himself. He was really working on a lot of projects, and we got it to a point that he was able to get back training. It was really annoying him. It was a lot of discomfort. We got him to a point that he was able to get back into training and start to enjoy it. And then on our call, let's say our last call, once it had cleared up, I was like, what's your next couple of weeks looking like? And he said, I have a fight, my first MMA fight coming up in like 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, on the Wednesday, Thursday and Friday of that week, you have to be more aware that it's going to kick up, because of the fact that it possibly could kick up, because of the fact that you're up in your training, as well as the stress of the fight at the end of the week. And I know this myself because it used to happen to me when I was boxing. I noticed like around the All-Ireland, stuff like that, my shoulder, my back started kicking up randomly, and it was very annoying, and I never really understood why. But once you get in there and you start moving, it calms down again. But I was like to him, okay, on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there's a big possibility that it kicks up. Grand, whole thing, we go through it, we finish up the call. 3 weeks later, I get a text with laughing faces on the Wednesday saying that you'd never believe what's after happening. My back's after going into spasm. And I just told him, you know what it is, you know you haven't injured it, it just means you have to come back to your recovery. You need to relax the system down, and you need to fall back on your principles that we worked on. And he was able to do that, and he was able to fight at the weekend. Calmed it down, knew that he hadn't re-injured it, it just had kicked up. But only that we had talked about it before, and we had identified his triggers previously, he was able to do that. Okay, so I hope with what I'm talking about is giving you a better understanding of why this is and how it happens. And then when we look at these issues, okay, so we have our understanding and now we've reflected on it. Now we need to start prioritizing what's the most important thing. You need to look at this idea of like, what's the one biggest thing that if you change it, it's going to have the biggest impact on your recovery and your rehab or your improvement, improving the issue. Or you could look at like Pareto's 80-20 rule. What 20% of factors are going to have 80% of the benefit? With this case, you need to look and think about principles first, and then the things after that, the smaller things after that. What are the principles? Principles are always your activity, your levels of stress, your sleep, your diet, your hydration, your movement activity. Very similar. If you look at it like that and you take care of those things first, you're going to help to solve a lot of cases yourself. And then you need to go into the weeds a bit, and you need to pick out the other factors. But if you just go straight in, everything kicks up and you just go for a massage, okay, it might help short term to manage the stress side of things, perfect, but what are you doing after? Are you just leaving that massage and going back to your normal life and just going straight back into your highly stressed environment where you're lacking sleep, you're fatigued, everything else is off, and you're staying up late and you're doing all these other factors? Because if you are, that massage is not really a release, it's just a 2-hour release. Everything kicks up again later on that evening. So instead of that, you need to look at how you can plan it so that, like, I've nothing against massage. I love massage. My God, when I lived in Indonesia, it's one thing I miss about being in Argentina, which I'm sure I could get it as well, but like the availability of massages in Bali, in Indonesia, it's unbelievable. You could get one every day if you wanted to. And it's something that I miss about it. So I would never knock massage. I love it. I think it has such a good effect on you. But when you use it in conjunction with other things, so you, let's say, have your massage and then you plan your evening after, so it's a more relaxing evening, then you plan the next evening that you do something else that's going to calm it down as well. And then you look at how you can break these recovery periods into your day, so you can help take down that the alertness of that system. This is the thing, there's so many things you can do to help it, Once you isolate what the main thing is, what the biggest issue is, in that case it was obviously stress. In other cases it could be just activity. It could be that you're focusing on rest too much when you need to get up and move around a small bit more. Or it also could be your sleep. As I said, you're staying up late or watching Netflix, and you're drinking tea late into the night, and you're just not feeling like you're tired because the caffeine is in your system. So you continue to stay up late, sleep less, and it just gets worse and worse, and you're fatigued and everything else. So prioritize. Once you understand it, once you reflect and you can highlight the triggers, it's time to prioritize what you need to work on. But you can't prioritize, as I go back again, you can't prioritize without understanding first. So that's what the thing is. There's levels to it. You build your foundation and you build on top of that after. What's up, guys? Robbie here. I hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. I want to take a moment just to personally ask you for your help. If you're enjoying the podcast, would you be willing to share it with someone you think would love it too? Maybe a friend, family member on social media, or even if you just brought it up in conversation with someone you know. The recommendation means the world to us, and it's because of people like you that we get to be able to produce this podcast on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for your support so far, and I would love if you could help us reach even more people who could benefit from it too. Really appreciate you, and we're going to jump straight back to the podcast. Which brings us in to the last couple of points. And the last couple of points are, when you have everything else laid, so you have your strong foundation laid for your house, now you can start to build resilience and build tolerance. And this is where we know we can lay out all the factors that are affecting us. We take care of the things that we're able to take care of, and then we start to build, in a way, resilience, confidence, strength, whatever way you want to look at it. You can build on those and you get better at them. So you become more resilient to stress because you have good recovery protocols that cause your stress to be taken down. Like as I was saying there, with your massage, and you build on top of that. It could be breathing exercises. It could be going for a walk in the park. It could be going for a swim. Build those first and build around them. Then you are working on how you can improve your strength in the areas that you need to improve strength on. And this is where you start looking at, okay, right, does that person maybe they have a weaker lower back because they haven't used it in a while because they're avoiding it. Maybe they do need to work on their legs, or they need to work on the strength around their hips. Okay, this is where it comes into it. Now you can start to work on it. Generally, it's mostly that you just need to up the whole activity of the body. You need to build strength everywhere as opposed to isolating a certain area, but that's another podcast in itself. But understanding when you start to do this, and when you start to up these, you start to train these areas a bit more, you're more likely to get a flare-up. And this is a point that we have to understand. There's going to be flare-ups along the way. It doesn't mean that you're back at square one. It just means that you've hit the limit. To rebuild the confidence in your body, we need to test that limit. And we need to test that, as you've heard me talk about in other podcasts, that burn spot, where the burn spot on your nervous system has a lower threshold of pain. I'm just kind of sprinkling this in there here for the people who have heard the recent podcasts on understanding chronic pain. And if you haven't, you go back to that one and listen to it. But you have that burn spot. You need to improve the tolerance or the threshold of pain. And you can do that through mobility, strength, running, exercise, any exercise that you enjoy. But understand that you're playing the long-term game here, and you're going to have flare-ups as a result. But it's slowly but surely, by hitting those limits consistently, having your strategies to reduce the pain, taking care of everything else, you can fix that area. You can fix that burn spot, and you can do more each week. I often, when I'm talking to people on this, they're like, oh, I've been doing strength, I've been doing gym work for ages, or I've been doing the running for ages, and ages a lot of the times is 14 days, it's 2 weeks. But I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm not noticing any improvement. And then when you go back and you highlight it, and you highlight the little things, you can see, well, before you were only able to run a K and it kicked up. Now you're able to cover 4.5K without having any issues at all. Surely that's an improvement. It doesn't mean that you can run a marathon yet. People always, a lot of times we look at the goalposts and we measure versus like the biggest thing, when we need to focus on the small ones along the way. So that actually brings me to my last one. I don't want to cover too much on that yet because I'm going to cover it in this point. You need to be consistent with everything. Once you have an understanding, once you have reflected on it and you've identified the triggers and the issues that are contributing to it, once you have prioritized what's the most important thing to fix as well as started to work on it and build resilience, build strength and build confidence in your body, then you just need to focus on being consistent. This is where people get lost because they feel, okay, I'm going to have it fixed in whatever, 5 sessions with a physio, or 6 sessions I think is actually what the kind of average is. 6 sessions with a physio. But then they wonder why it kicks up again in 2 months' time or 3 months' time. Is you need to continue to work on that. Once it gets good, that's when you double down and you look for the next level. You continue to push on. If you do, you can make the change long term. It is the most important part that you're consistent. If you're consistent, you can see the change, you will notice it, and then you can be sure that you're going to be more confident. And as I said to you, if there's one thing that I can guarantee with this whole lot, is that you will have times along the way and along the journey that it's going to flare up. And this is when your old habits are going to kick in and you're going to feel like you're back at square one again. And it's going to feel like you're making no progress towards your goal, and you're going to ask yourself, are you wasting your time again? I can guarantee you there's going to be a point that will happen, because it happens to everybody. It happens to us all, and that's how we get stuck into this chronic state of wondering why it's never getting fixed, is that once it feels good, we stop to work on it and we don't continue on after that point. And we don't continue to set bigger goals for ourselves and really look back at enjoying our life. Focusing on, now that we have a body that we are comfortable with, let's continue to test that limit. Let's continue to push on, set that limit higher. If you do that, and you understand going into it that it's going to kick up. It might not be now. It might be in 6 weeks' time, or it might be in 6 months' time. But if you understand that and you ask yourself, have you just wasted the last 6 months? You'll be able to say, no, I haven't. I can see where I'm at. I have my goals. I know what I'm trying to get to. And if we can break that barrier, and if we can break that habit where it kicks up and we start to go into this vicious cycle, if we can break that cycle, we're set up for success. That's what it is. That's really what it is. If we can do it, you're going to be set up for success, and it's going to happen again. And then you break it again. And it happens less, and it happens less, and it happens less. And that's why I was talking about it in that other podcast where I said that that's when people jump on a call to you and they say, I haven't had a flare up in 2 years. That's exactly what it is. That's how you do it. Is you're consistent. When it kicks up, you work on it again. You don't just throw everything away and try something new and look for a new diagnosis. You just continue to work on it. You know what you have to do. You just buckle down, you get the work done, and it clears up, and then the next time it's not going to happen at the same level again. And if you can do it, I'm not joking, you'd be so surprised at how much of an effect this has on your mental state and on your body. Each time you beat it, your confidence is going to increase, your motivation is going to get even higher. And the funny thing, this is something that people often say, is that they will say that people will actually begin to comment on how much of a change you've made. The people around you, the people in your circle, the people in the town, the people in the village, they will start to make note of, look at how much of a change this person, like how much they say, geez, you've really changed, you're looking great. So we can really see the change in you. And they might not even know, but they won't realize what you've been through to do that. But it's funny because that's a thing that I often hear people say, is that the people around them will start to comment, wow, you really make a change. There's a glow on you. There's a glow off you. You look like you've so much energy. You look like you've so much life in you now. But they won't know the little battles that you've been through to get to that stage. And that might happen in a year's time. But my God, it's one of the things that really lifts people. And it really lifts me to see it as well, to see it in the people that I work with, where they come and they tell me something like that someone come up to them and told them how much of a improvement they've made, or how much progress they've made, or even how motivating they are at the moment because they've seen where they were before and what they've gotten to. Now, with these cases, oftentimes it's important to have someone that you can rely on, or a community that can help you through in a lot of cases. So that's why it's good to, once you get an understanding of it and you kind of know what you're doing and you're working on it, it's good to have a community that can keep everyone together and keep everyone driving in the same direction. And from what I've talked about here, it is a process, it is a system, it does take time. With the understand, with the reflection, with the prioritization, with the resilience and the consistency, it does take time, and it does take effort, and it takes work, but it's an enjoyable process. It is really an enjoyable process because you come to learn so much about your mind and your body and how the two are connected, and how you can really take control. You don't let the pain control you anymore. You actually control the pain. You control how much it is. how much it affects you and what effect it has in your life. Just from building on it and just from doing these small things in the day-to-day. And that's all I wanted to talk about for this podcast. I wanted to give you an idea of, if you were to start today, how you can fix this issue. And if you wanted to, if you put your mind to it, what you could do to get it right. And all you would have to do is implement these steps and work through these consistently, like a system where you're going around in circles and you're just focusing on it and you're getting it right. If you did that, you'd be so surprised in 6 months' time how much of a change that would have on your body. If you've listened to this podcast and now you're thinking, I would love to get started, or I don't know where to start, as kind of a finish to the podcast, I want to talk a small bit about the program that I've put out recently, and this is the Spine Initiative program. And it basically covers every single one of these. The program was built off of working with people one-to-one over the last 5 to 6 years, figuring out what the biggest issues were, where the mental barriers were, what the mindset was around it, where the physical barriers were with these chronic and recurring issues. And after a year of trying to put it into place and put it into a course form or putting it into a method or a system, it's finally released. So at the time of this recording, people have heard me talking about it. If you go back, you could probably go back 10 podcasts or 15 podcasts ago, even more, and you'll hear me talking about that I'm going to release this program. But at the time of recording right now, the course is open. And the goal of the course is, as I said, it's a system to implement each of these steps. It teaches you each of the above steps as well as how to overcome them. It gives you the tactics and strategies to work on it. And what we do is we provide you with a method to tackle each obstacle so that you're able to stay consistent. That's kind of the goal of it. It's been really difficult to try put this all together, and I've had people testing it and coming back and working on it and then changing it and doing this over and over and over again. But we've got it to a point now that it's extremely effective and it works. And the goal of the program is to get you from a position where you have back pain or ongoing back pain, and it doesn't have to be lower back pain specifically, it can be upper back pain, shoulder pain. It's this recurring pain. It gets you from that to we start back running, we start back with exercise, and then it builds it from there. So if that's something that you're interested in, it has a graded exercise program. It helps you to improve your mobility, your strength, and as I said, get you back running again. And right now, at this point, when this podcast comes out, so if you're listening to this podcast in 6 months' time, it might be changed. But I'm offering a few select people who want to work with me specifically, work one-to-one for the 6 weeks of the program. I'm offering that right now. To do that, you'll have to contact me, and I will actually also add it in the link in this program here. So what we will do is you have the course, you go through the course, and then we'll go through 3 consultations. So we'll do one every 2 weeks to make sure you're on point. But that's for the people who need the accountability side of things. I know there's other people who are just well able to implement it and to go straight at it, and you can go on right now, you can download it and you can get started on that today. So if you click the link in the description, really easy to use, all videos. It's like you download the Kajabi app, it has all your videos there. You start off with your education, you go through your reflection, you can do reflection on the app, and then it has the exercise program there. But that's all for me today. If anyone is interested in that or has any questions, do not hesitate. Just get on to me on Instagram at The Mobility Tutor, or you can send me an email at info@themobilitytutor.com. But that's all for me today, guys. Girls, I really, really appreciate listening. I hope this was able to shed a bit more light on what you can do and how you can work on this. But for now, I will chat to you all again next week. Have a good one. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and rehab programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you will find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.